Hi, my name is Laura Marie Coleman, and I'm glad you're joining us to watch this video on thinking flexibly when comparing fractions in grades 3 through 5. To start off, let's just think about for a moment, how would you compare 21/21 or 21/30? How did you think about comparing these fractions? I bet a lot of you thought about finding a common denominator. This is a strategy that we teach a lot of students, and it is a really important strategy because the truth is it will always help you find the right answer. This is also true. While finding a common denominator to compare fractions will always help you find a correct answer, it's not necessarily always the best way. Today, we're going to look at multiple strategies for comparing fractions and the situations that each strategy is best suited for. Think about how you would compare these two fractions. In third grade, students compare fractions, and they start with fractions like this, where they think about the fact that both wholes are the same size, so I can compare them. And because both fractions are fifths, I know the denominator is the same, so that means the units are the same size. And when that's the case, the number of units is what I use to help compare the fractions, the numerators. 3/5 is less than 4/5 because I have fewer parts of the same size. Let's think about this one. In 3/4 and 3/6, the denominators are not the same, so the pieces are not the same size. But the numerators are the same size, so we know we have the same number of each size pieces. When you look at this picture, I can picture two wholes that are the same size. One is broken up into fourths, and the other one is broken up into sixths. When I look at these two, I can see that fourths are larger or greater than sixths are. Therefore, if I have 3/4 and 3/6, 3/4 is going to be more because the pieces are bigger. So 3/4 is greater than 3/6. Now in this situation, comparing 3/5 and 4/10, our numerators are both different and our denominators are both different. We could find a common denominator to compare, but we might not have to. When I look at this picture and I think about 3/5 and 4/10, I think that 3 is more than half of 5. And I also know that 4 is less than half of 10. In this situation, I'm using a benchmark number. I'm thinking about comparing these two fractions based on where they fall in relation to 1/2. So since 3 is more than 1/2 of 5 and 4 is less than 1/2 of 10, I know that 3/5 is greater than 4/10 because 3/5 is more than a half and 4/10 is less than a half. Let's go back to our opening problem. Now that we've explored a couple different ways that we could think about this, when you look at these, we might first think, well, the numerators are different and the denominators are different, so the first two strategies won't help. But I could think about a benchmark number. Benchmark numbers, we talked about using 1/2. I also could use closer to 0 or closer to 1 whole. For this example, I like thinking about 1 whole. If you picture where 20/21 or 21/30 would be on this number line, where would you put them? When I looked at these, I thought 20/21 is only one part away from being 1 whole, so it's pretty close to a whole. But 21/30, when I think 30, I think 3 tens, and 21 is made of 2 tens, so it's like 2/3 of that whole. Based on that thinking, I know that 20/21 is closer to 1 whole. So 20/21 is greater than 21/30. So as we've gone through this, we've looked at a few different ways to compare fractions that involve flexible thinking outside of finding a common denominator. The first one was to think about the number of parts. If the denominators are the same and the parts are the same size, whichever one has more parts is greater. Then I could think about the sizes of the parts. If the number of parts are similar, I can think about which ones are larger parts and which ones are smaller parts based on the denominator. And the final way I can think flexibly about comparing fractions is using benchmark numbers. I might ask myself, is it closer to 0 or 1 whole? Or is it more or less than half? So remember, when comparing fractions, one can always find a common denominator to compare, but this is not always the best way. Thanks for joining me for this video on comparing fractions with flexible thinking strategies. I hope you'll check out more of our content videos and printable math resources on our website at pimaedu.com, or reach out to schedule some custom coaching and professional development for your district.